thank you. And yeah, welcome this morning. So as Zach was saying, our fourth day, isn't it? So time goes by quite quickly. So I guess, in a way, we need to be moving on, as though that might be a slightly misleading thing to say. I said at the beginning of the retreat that in a way I was sort of loosely using this idea of grounding, turning towards and seeing through. But of course these aren't really separate stages of a linear process. Yeah, they obviously connect and feed back into each other in a kind of dynamic, ongoing way. Nevertheless, perhaps the distinction's worth making. So the grounding is really establishing calm in a way. One way of understanding grounding, and of course you can find, you should really rely on your own experience and find out what works for you, but imaginatively these days I tend to think about it having sort of three elements to it. The first, and I sometimes, depending what mood I'm in, I refer to these as vessels. This idea of vessel comes from alchemy, the vessel which is a container in which the work is done, if you like, container in which the transformation, if there is any, takes place. And so the first vessel is the world, yeah, which you can take to mean the whole cosmos, if you like, or you can just take to mean your kind of planetary home, or in any way you want, really. But this means that we kind of establish some relationship with the world. Yeah, so when we talk about grounding, sometimes it's talked about as if it's just something we do in our body. But obviously it's something to do with the relationship of our body, or I say body, our psychic body, our physical body, our energetic body. Our body, of course, has these different kind of ways of imagining it or experiencing it. So grounding is firstly our relationship with our environment in a way. We're grounded in an environment. We're in-worldened, if you like. To be embodied is also to be in-worldened. There's no such word as there, but anyway. To be in relationship, in a felt relationship with the world. This might sound a little bit abstract, but actually it's kind of fundamental to what we're doing, because I'm not going to go into this in huge details, it's such a sort of big subject, but roughly 7,000 years ago, you seem to get this shift. You got this shift from a kind of cultures that were certainly in what's sometimes called old Europe, but also in the Middle East, lesser extent China and places like that, because actually Taoism wasn't kind of suppressed. But anyway, you get this shift, you get a movement from earth-based, feminine deity to masculine sky god. And what happened here was that whereas it came in very multiple forms, many different forms. But what happened with the feminine with the worship of the feminine was part of creation. Yeah, it was implicit in everything. So people, and of course some indigenous people still very much live like this, whether whether they're Amazonian or shamanic, northern peoples, they still live this way, where they understand the sacred as immanent in everything, in rocks, rivers, mountains, animals, everything. So there's no separation between what we could loosely call the sacred or the divine, whatever words you want to use, and the material. Material is ensouled, yeah, it has its own psyche. Yeah. And then you got this shift to a masculine sky god, where the god was understood as outside of creation. So rather than being immanent in creation, it becomes a creator god, and the god stands outside of the creation itself. And as I say, I'm not going to go into this in huge detail, but then we get this whole myth, what in some ways has been a ruling myth of the monotheistic religions, the Abrahamic religions. We get this idea of this, we're expelled, aren't we? We're expelled from Eden. We're expelled from the sacred land into a barren world. A world barren in the sense that it is no longer has the divine within itself. Yeah, the divine is separated out into something other. And this is a kind of fundamental shift in the way we experience the world. And you could say in the last few hundred years, the chickens are coming home to roost, as it were. Yeah, the consequences of a disenchantment of the world is really beginning to come back on us. Yeah. So this coming back into relationship with the world, it's an imaginal relationship. I keep using this word imaginal. I don't want you to confuse this with a fantasy. Imagination is through our imagination that the world offers itself to us. Yeah, this is so fundamental to the understanding of what we're doing. Everything we experience in self-reflective consciousness is experienced through what we might call image. Not necessarily a visual image. It might be a felt image, might be a heard image. But reflective consciousness itself, as the whole image, as that implies, it has to be made into an image. This is how we're self-conscious. This is what self-consciousness is, our ability to make image. Yeah? So when I talk about imaginal, I'm talking about how we receive the world. Anyway, I'll come back to that in a moment. I'll just leave that there. So the first sort of shell or vessel of grounding is grounding within the world. Yeah. The second vessel, we could say, is grounding within our own body. Of course, this is a bit of a false dichotomy, because our body is no more or less part of the world than anything else. but we tend to experience it differently, don't we? We tend to experience it as ours, somehow discrete from other. So it's this relationship between our body and the world that we're grounding through, or in, if you like. And I was thinking yesterday, and I quite often do add this sort of third vessel, which you might understand. Well, I've been thinking about this as the heart. The heart is a kind of inner vessel, or a secret vessel, or the esoteric vessel. Do I mean the literal heart? Maybe, to some extent, I don't know. Or maybe we're just talking about a metaphorical heart, or maybe the two aren't to be separated in that way. Heart is a sort of interesting word, isn't it? Because it means our physical heart. In a lot of traditions, actually, a lot of Eastern traditions, when they refer to the heart, they're referring to the whole circulatory system. It's not just the physical organ of the heart, it's the whole system of circulation of energy around the body. The circulation of our blood, which of course carries our oxygen to each of our cells. All of this is included in the sort of idea of heart. In this sense, we can sort of think it's our life essence, isn't it? So, anyway, what's very interesting about the heart, from my point of view, is in many traditions, perhaps most vividly, or most explicitly, actually, in the Islamic, sort of mystical side of Islam. The heart is understood, it's referred to as having a himma, this quality himma, which is the part of our heart that participates in the divine. Yeah. The heart becomes, I've already mentioned this, the heart becomes a perceptual, is understood as a perceptual organ. And what it perceives is the spiritual nature of the cosmos, in a way. It's through the heart that a kind of divine impulse comes in. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want you to worry about this. I don't even particularly want you to make too much of an effort to understand, because what we're working with here again is a kind of an imaginal way of opening something. So from a more kind of practical point of view, if we have this idea of an inner vessel, what's at the core, this word core of course is related to heart. If the core of us, what's at the real center of us, we could refer this to the heart. And what I've already been suggesting is that one of the most fundamental things we're trying to do is kind of shift our imaginal center, which I think for most Westerners now is well and truly in the head, maybe even in the frontal kind of part of the head. This is where we sort of imagine, and we imagine these things in this way because they have some experiential validity to the imagining. You know, it's not completely random. These days we think of being in our heads, don't we? As if we sort of, our ego consciousness kind of resides in our head. And one of the fundamental shifts we're trying to make is to place the heart at the center, to begin to encourage And these are interesting words to encourage. This is very much associated with the heart, isn't it? Courage. And to encourage is to come into the heart in a way. But anyway, to shift at a kind of centre of us, I've been referring to this perhaps as, you can imagine it as a mandala. Most of you are probably quite familiar with mandalas, and they tend to have a central figure, don't they, or a central design, which constellates the rest of the mandala. So we place the heart at the centre, and the rest of us sort of constellates around this centre. I think it's very important. In Triratna, there's quite often this, we use this word integration, as one of the sort of principal aims of meditation, to integrate. But I think we've got to be very careful when we use this word, and to understand that integration is to constellate the differentiated parts of the psyche. It's not to put the psyche in a kind of blender and make a smoothie. Yeah, it's to have the different parts of us in relation with one another. For this to happen, there probably needs to be a kind of central or heart or sun in which the other elements constellate around. This shift is what Suzuki Roshi or Zen Buddhists in general would mean when they talk about a shift from small mind to big mind. This shift is also a shift from the ego consciousness being dominant to the heart consciousness becoming dominant. What's at the core of us becomes the consolating element, rather than our ego consciousness being in charge, or our rational mind being in charge. Obviously, our ability to think in the way we do is extremely useful to us, but when it's dominant, it's not so useful to us. That part of our mind is about manipulating the world. I'm not using the word manipulation in a derogatory way, We manipulate the world when we create something beautiful, don't we? We manipulate the world in all sorts of different ways. But it is about our manipulation of the world. That's what it's there for. But when that manipulative part of us becomes dominates, this is not such a great way of being in the world, as we're finding out. So anyway, I don't want this to get too complicated. Sort of broadly speaking, we can say we ground within the world, we ground within our own bodies and relationship to the world, and we ground within shifting our own kind of centre of gravity down from the head to the heart. This gives us a very strong clue of what shift we're trying to make through meditating. Meditating isn't about sitting there thinking about things. Yeah, that isn't really meditating. Of course, this happens to all of us. As when we meditate, we have thoughts, they arise, which is fine. That's not a problem. That's just what happens. The problem is when we kind of engage with those thoughts. So we add something more to it, and this is what we could refer to as reinforcing or remaking an idea of a separate self continuously. And this is what we're trying not to do as meditators. we're trying not to reinforce our separateness from the rest of the world. As soon as we fall into a kind of constricted, usually abstract, I think what you're looking out for is when you go into an abstraction, you know, when your experience is no longer based primarily in a kind of physicality or energetics of being, so you've lost really your connection with your own source when this is happening. You've lost connection with what it really feels like to be in the world, which isn't an idea. Being in the world isn't an idea. You know, you go and see, I had the privilege of leading a retreat at El Foxton last year. It's a new place they've got in North Somerset, and one of the things about El Foxton, it's got these amazing trees. And it's got one particularly very ancient oak. I think it's the biggest oak tree I've ever seen. It's certainly among the biggest oak trees I've ever seen. And it's got such a sense of being. It's so there. It's so there. It's so part of the world, and it's so much itself. Even though, of course, a massive oak like that is a home for countless creatures, countless other life forms, birds, insects, moss. You know, this goes on. It's a whole universe in itself. Yeah. Which, of course, although we might not like to think about it, our own bodies are also a home for countless other creatures, if you like to use that word. Countless other little microscopic creatures live on and in us. We are a whole world. Our bodies support, well, they say, I don't know how they come up with these sort of things, but they're talking about these 50% of you is not actually of human origin, isn't it? It's made up of viral or microscopic other beings, you know, other life forms. You're the home for them. I find this quite encouraging to think of my own body as a home for other creatures. It sort of shifts our understanding of what it means to be human. Even the mitochondria in our cells is originally viral, evidently. Anyway, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent now, but it is all part of this kind of loosening of what we are, what we think we are. What we tend to think we are is this rather tight, psychological, it doesn't really, it's hard to find the words, isn't it? That's why I rather just like this idea of, when we call it the small self, this contracted experience of ourself, which is not actually, why this matters is because from a Buddhist perspective, it's not actually true. Yeah? It isn't actually what we are. So this is something, it's very interesting to me. Even when we talk about insight in Buddhism, it's so easy to talk about it as if it's some kind of abstract idea. You know, we suddenly have this brilliant insight, which is this sort of mental experience. But of course, it isn't an idea. It's just how things are. It's just how things are. Yeah, you are just part of the world. You exist more or less entirely relationally, you know, within relation we're in relationship to these other non-human cells that make you up, these non-human microscopic creatures that are in your eyebrows and everywhere, you know, and of course in relation to what we think of as the outside world. But what is the outside world? There is no clear outside and inside world. I mean, this is why we do practices like the 6 element practice, because we're trying to loosen this idea that somehow we exist independently. There's no independent existence, not only of human beings, but of anything. And of course, we're just talking about this on a particular kind of level, you know, the level that we experience reality as. But of course, there's other levels of reality that we don't really have any experiential access to at all. You know, the subatomic, for instance. Anyway, we won't go there. Anyway, so we ground through establishing a relationship with with the world, the so-called world, and with our own hearts and with our own bodies. Until we've established some kind of, traditionally this would be called samatha really. We're just coming into presence. But it's also, I don't want, until we've established some kind of grounding, we can't really work within meditation. Because we just go off up into our heads and it all just becomes a kind of intellectual, we're just sitting there thinking, aren't we? We're sitting there worrying about something or trying to change something or trying to work something out. Or trying, which isn't really meditation, yeah. So this grounding is absolutely essential to create the conditions in which we can turn towards things effectively. I won't work so, but we shouldn't think that there's a clear distinction between grounding and turning towards. The grounding is the turning towards in a sense. I just wanted to bring in the historical Buddha, or the mythological historical Buddha, if you like, because of course we don't really quite know what happened. But in the story of the Buddha, in the myth of the Buddha, he takes his place, doesn't he? He takes his place under the Bodhi tree, where he's made this kind of vow that he's just going to sit there until he either gets enlightened or his blood dries up and he dies, sort of thing. And at some point during this process that we later know as his awakening or his enlightenment, some point in this process, all this material starts coming up for him, doesn't it? It's talked about as Mara, as an external kind of attack, if you like. These days we'd probably interpret that as a sort of internal psychic event. You know? Our own shadow material, if you like. Although that distinction is probably not quite as simple as we might think, because of course we're already part of the world. You know, if we're not completely discrete from the world, it also means our psyche is not completely discrete. That's sort of what's sometimes referred to as psycho-id, which elements in the psyche, which are elements in the psyche that might be entirely independent from ourselves. They might not have anything to do with your personal history either. This is a kind of modern, we've got very much since Freud, we've got very much into this idea of our psyche being made up of our individual history. I think this is, as though of course it is at least in part made up of our individual history, there might be elements in the psyche that don't really have anything to do with your individual history. Yeah, anyway, this is a big subject, but you know, both in Buddhism and more recently in the work of someone like Carl Jung, you know, we get this idea of collective consciousness, or the collective unconscious rather, where our psyche also has historical or even evolutionary kind of elements to it, or kind of archetypal, mythical elements to it, which can't necessarily be explained by your own life story. You know? I think it's quite important to remember that. Yeah. But anyway, from the traditional Buddhist point of view, these forces are imagined or talked about as if they're external to the Buddha and attacking the Buddha. This is the attack of Mara, isn't it? We call these the hindrances in a way. Why I'm bringing this up is that within this story we get the basic methodology of meditation. Yeah? The basic methodology of a turning towards. And so what we're told happens when the Buddha is assailed by the forces of Mara, we're told that he turns towards them with loving kindness. Yeah. He pervades them with thoughts of love. So this is so simple, but it's also so striking and so fundamental. This is the basic method. Once some kind of stability has been established, anything that comes up is just turned to with love. Of course, this isn't easy to do. It can be very, very difficult to do. But this is what we're trying to do. And this is what over our years of practice, by developing samatha, calm, awareness, we're trying to cultivate this ability to abide with all of our material with an attitude of love, openness, tenderness. We're not trying to work it out. We're not trying to figure out why it's there. We're just kind of allowing it to, we're just opening to it, aren't we? And we're told that the weapons, the rocks and the arrows and whatever was which kind of thrown at the Buddha just touches aura. Touches aura, I mean, it comes into consciousness perhaps, we could, yeah. As they come into consciousness, they just turn into flowers, yeah. They just turn into these beautiful flowers, yeah? And just drop harmlessly around him. Yeah. This methodology is very, very difficult from the perspective of the ego consciousness, which wants to manipulate and control our experience. That's what it wants to do, and that's why when something difficult comes up or something, well, we don't even do, I don't want to keep going on about difficult, because actually we do this not only with difficult material or so-called what we might call traumatic material, we also do this with love, with the joy and the delight of the world and of our experience of being in the world. all of it needs to be controlled. The ego thinks it needs to control everything. Not only the bad, it also needs to control the good. Yeah, if we can use that dichotomy. It needs to be in charge. Yeah. So this is why it's so difficult. Yeah? And this is why, in a way, the grounding is a continuous part of our practice. It's not something we just do and then we can just do it. Because whenever something challenging or unexpected comes up when we sit, the tendency will always be to go back up into the abstract ego consciousness. That part of you that wants to control, wants to be in charge. Yeah. And when this happens, of course, we have to come back to grounding. We have to come back to just softening and opening. So this love isn't an idea, well, it might be partly an idea, but actually it's a physical or energetic response to the material. It's the ability to keep the stability and to just continue to open out into and give the material the space it needs, not to try and take control of it, but to give it the space it needs to self-liberate. This is essential, isn't it, to many traditions, whether it's the Zen tradition or the Dzogchen or the Mahamudra or just the Buddha's own example, and I say just, the Buddha's own example of his own enlightenment. What it consists of really is an opening. And when we open in this way, which we do primarily energetically, physically, when we open in this way, this material takes care of itself. There's not some puzzle to be worked out. There's not some kind of detective novel like we get in Freud, where we have to discover the origins of the so-called origins of our history or something. From a meditative point of view, all we need to do is relax and open, relax and open, relax and open. And this is what we're calling love. Yeah? Love is when we open to reality as it is. And when we stop trying to manipulate and control reality, it just does what reality does. It liberates itself, it moves on. It has this material that seems to be in our bodies, seems to be in our psyche, has its own dynamic. This idea that we can take control of it through the conscious ego and manipulate it is a mistake. We're in it, it's not in us. We're in the psyche is not in us. We're in the world, yeah. We're in the world materially, but we're also in the world psychically. We're part of something. We don't have any ownership over any of this. What we do have through practice is the ability to start to relax and open and to put love or the heart at the center of what we're doing. This is what we can do. It's not easy, but we can do it. In a way, it's very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. Our practice is very simple, you know. We sit still, we abide with kind attention with what's going on, and we just try and keep opening, just keep opening. So turning towards them, it's a nice, I like this idea. Whenever I think of this word, turning towards, I think of an elephant, how they're said, aren't they? We get this in the Buddhist scriptures, how this image of an elephant, how an elephant turns towards. Evidently elephants don't just turn their heads, they turn their whole body towards. Yeah. So we're not just being aware of it in the sense mentally, we're just turning our whole body towards whatever our experience is. We can do this because we've already spent a long time, probably years, developing samatha, developing calm, developing alignment in the posture, learning to actually just sit with. This is the first stage, isn't it? To be able to sit with, rather than think we should have to get up and do something about everything. Of course, in our lives we need to do things, and this is very good. But meditation is quite a special thing. It's not just part of your normal life. It's a rather special, precious thing, where we allow the receptive, call it that perhaps, we allow the, got to be careful here, because I realise the older I get, there's a sort of slightly polytheistic tendency entering into the way I'm talking about these things, but in a way allow ourselves to experience the divine nature of everything within our own bodies, within our own psyches. And to do this is a very special part of our lives. Of course it can spill out into the rest of our lives, but we're taking time each day to allow that possibility for something other than our normal ego consciousness to come into awareness. A very sort of delicate and precious thing we're doing when we're meditating. Anyway, I don't know how much sense any of that made, but I'm not trying to give you some kind of technical or systematic instruction in meditation. That's not what we're doing here. What I'm trying to ask you to do, or what I'm trying to encourage you to do, is to be with your own heart, be with your own material, and trust in reality, if you like, trust in the process. Whatever that might mean, whatever that can mean for you, at whatever point in your life you are, whether you're still quite young with a lot of life in front of you, or whether you're wherever you are with your life, you can always turn towards your life, which is also a turning towards the world. Okay, we'll meditate in a minute. Get yourselves comfortable. What's he doing? I don't know why. I've got a sudden with my wrist. My left wrist has gone kind of funny. Okay. Here's let's start with a poem. This is Gunnar Eklof's Aya Asma, which is the cult of a wish-fulfilling well. a strange and mysterious title for a poem. The black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. The black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. All around the image, the white silver, worn to shreds by kisses. The very metal, worn to shreds by kisses. Framed in metal, the black image, worn to shreds by kisses. Oh, the darkness, worn to shreds by kisses. The darkness in our eyes, worn to shreds by kisses. All we wished for, worn to shreds by kisses. All we never wished for, kissed and worn to shreds by kisses. All we escaped, worn to shreds by kisses. All we wished for, kissed and kissed again. Come into your breath. On the out breath, just release your legs. Just give up your holding in your legs, and so they make a kind of sensuous contact with the earth. Let the soles of your feet soften, the eyes in the soles of your feet open. Those delicate little bones in your feet. Release the lower part of your posture. What would it be like not to hold on anymore? Not to be in that perpetual fight or flight modality. just to trust reality as it is, insubstantial, unsatisfactory, impermanent. It's just how it is. Also, of course, beautiful, mysterious, divine. This is just how it is. Your face relaxed down through your body into the very earth. Open up the crown. Lovely word, isn't it? The crown. The crown traditionally is open, isn't it? Lets the light in. Lets the sky, let the sky in. And possibly vast openness that's always above you. Let your skull find its ground in the sky above you. Let your pelvis settle into the ground below you. Between the root and the crown, at the very center of you, at the middle, is the middle way of the heart. Let's see if you can relax your face. Imagine your awareness just sort of tending to descend from the frontal part of your brain release the jaw a little, through the throat. We haven't really done anything with the throat yet, have we? But you can probably feel how vital the throat is in this connection between heart and head. It's a kind of quite a narrow gate, isn't it, there, the throat. Make sure you're not constricting the throat by pulling back the head. Try and have a sense of the throat being nice and open. So your heart has got easy access in relationship. You can be, let's let the heart be in dialogue with our everyday consciousness, our ego consciousness. Let's get the heart into dialogue with that everyday self-referential consciousness, and let's thank it, let's thank our egos for all the hard work that they do, all our attempts to make us safe and happy in the world. Let's have a sense of appreciation for that part of us that works so hard and is so desperate for us to be happy and successful and well, so frantic and so hard working. Let's be appreciative towards that part of us, our ego consciousness. Let's tell it it's okay, it can relax, actually there's something else in charge. It doesn't have to worry all the time, it doesn't have to plan and scheme and manipulate all the time, it can have a little rest. The heart, this lion within us, the green lion of the heart. A sense of appreciation for that part of us. That too needs to be approached and celebrated with love. Let your face relax. Imagine relaxing down into your heart. Heart is a place of image. This is the language of the heart, is a felt image. This is where your dreams are made. This is where the divine nature of being itself is accessed and enters. The macrocosm comes in to us, the microcosm through the portal of the heart. The heart's easy to find because the breath takes us to the heart. Every time we inhale and every time we exhale, the heart is at the middle. The organizing principle. When you're in your heart, everything comes into relationship around the heart. It's no problem. Feel how the lungs support the heart. And feeling down below the heart through that mysterious solar plexus, through the diaphragm, the other part of our neurological system, all that intelligence down in the gut, the small intestines, and that whole kind of digestive, watery part of us. Held in the basket of the pelvis. So taking in the whole length of us, and letting your face relax. Maybe you can get some sense of how your spine rising up, serpentine through your body, sort of linking like a ladder or a vine, or like a snake. Right up from the root, right up to the top of your jawline, your skull just poised, balanced on top. And that whole body of yours, just notice that the breathing is something that the whole of your body does. Breathing isn't just your lungs and your heart. Breathing is every cell in your body is nourished through your in-breath. Waste products of even the fats and the toxics are largely breathed out. This is our main way of eliminating toxics and things from the body. It's just through our breath. Every cell replenished, cleansed with every breath. Feel how the whole of your body, even the bones, breathe. Everything breathes. There's life in every part of you. Much of that life not even what we could really call human at all. Whole universe inside of you, and the whole universe outside of you. Same universe. Just letting the whole body become loose around the breath, become alive around your breath. Get it all involved, get the whole of you on board, from your root, through your genitals, your gut, your heart, your throat, your face and brow and crown, your back and your front, your legs and your arms. Get everything. We meditate with all of us. Everything. Far too much for our conscious mind to take on, so there's some kind of mysterious relaxing into reality itself, the reality of your own being in the world. It's a letting go into when we stop holding ourselves apart and separate. It's just a simple release, a simple opening. And then the whole world supports you. For a moment, give up your schemes and your plans and just open to what's there, whatever it is. That sort of radical non-interference, a loving abiding with. own time, just move into a resting posture. Make sure you're warm enough and reasonably comfortable. See if you can get your head and your heart quite close in a way, if that's comfortable for you. So just laying still for a little bit longer, remembering anything that's happened while you've been laying down. Just remembering yourself, as it were. Maybe remembering your legs, your arms, your head to your heart. And this time, as you get up and retake your meditation postures, maybe just being aware of your heart, yeah. What's it? It's moving from being quite close to the ground, isn't it? A kind of resting of the earth there. It's moving to a more kind of intermediate position between earth and sky as you take your meditation posture. So no rush, just doing that in your own time. So we just have a period of just sitting. And just sitting, we just let things be as they are. The form given by the posture, and we attend in a open way to the breath. We're not trying to get concentrated. We're not trying to change anything. We're just attending to experience as it naturally arises. And this is a kind abiding with. We're not trying to manipulate our experience or control our experience, whether they're feelings or images or thoughts. We're just letting them be, but we're attentive. As I said before, it's a kind of radical non-interference that we're looking for, based in a kind of openness of heart. So we just give everything room to move through us, to develop in the way its internal dynamics, rather than trying to control everything. We just release that grasping, wanting to hold on, that wanting to be in charge, and trust the heart, which has its own direct access to reality, whatever that might mean. So just sitting, when you're sitting with these other people, we're sitting together, and all of us, of course, some way just sitting with the world as it is. This beautiful, difficult, contradictory place we call the world. black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. A black image, framed in silver, worn to shreds by kisses. All around the image, white silver, worn to shreds by kisses. The very metal, worn to shreds by kisses. Framed in metal, the black image, worn to shreds by kisses. Oh, the darkness, worn to shreds by kisses. Darkness in our eyes, worn to shreds by kisses. All we wish